I forget exactly how it came out, but I vividly remember Nicole's reaction. There were definitely some curses in there, and yes. There was enough.
I'm blaming it on the hormones, or the lack thereof.
There are many difficult things associated with infertility. Negative pregnancy tests, doctor visits, a good amount of poking and prodding, and lots of different conversations, like the one today's guest just alluded to, where one friend had to tell her struggling friend that she was pregnant. These things can be so difficult that often friendships can suffer, or even, in some instances, come to an end. But that's not what today's story is all about. Today we're sharing a story of an enduring friendship. Nicole and Mary, they both experienced their own infertility struggles, supported each other along the way, and then both incorporated their experiences through the work they ended up doing much later on in their careers. I'm Dan Bulger with Progyny, and this is Infertility. Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of This is Infertility, where we share people's personal experiences with fertility and family building. Before we dive in, I just want to take a second to remind you that we have some resources available for anyone who might want to bring fertility and family building benefits to their employer at progyny.com/talktohr. Most employers that offer these benefits do so because an employee asked for it, so take advantage of our resources and help us bring this life-changing benefit to your employer. I'm especially excited for today's episode as we think it's pretty unique. As I mentioned in the intro, today we're not hearing just one person's story, but two stories. Stories of two friends who managed their experiences at times apart and at times together. Mary and Nicole. They met in college and they've been close friends ever since. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Mary Lamattina. I'm a senior vice president in Aon's Health Solutions practice in New York City, a mom of 4, and my children range in age from 20 to 12.
My name is Nicole Gomez Fisher. I am a filmmaker here in New York. I am married with 2 beautiful twin girls via IVF and surrogacy and egg donation. The whole bag of it.
As you can tell, these two have had extremely different experiences building their families. But unfortunately, neither of them had what you would call a straightforward journey. Here's Mary.
I wasn't, gung-ho, let's have a baby the minute I got married. But then one day you get the bug and you become obsessed and you're like, that's it, I want it. And I'm a planner and I'm like, okay, this is when it's going to happen and this is what my life's going to look like. And none of that happened. And it took me a lot longer to get pregnant with my first. Finally happened. Then I didn't realize there was a thing called secondary infertility and ended up having several miscarriages and and not the same at all as what Nicole went through. But, there's a moment where you look around and you're like, okay, everyone had their first, now they're having their second. And I can't do that. What the heck? So I did go to fertility doctors. They figured out whatever the issue was. And eventually I was able to get pregnant multiple times. But yeah, there was that short period where I'm like, okay, I need to either accept that I'm going to have one and be very happy with that, right? Plenty of people just have one and want to only have one. But I kind of envisioned it a little bit differently. So I did kind of have those emotions for a short time, but nothing like what Nicole went through.
You heard Mary make reference to Nicole's experiences there, and we're about to get into Nicole's story. But of course, it is important to remember that this isn't a contest, and we shouldn't feel the need to compare our experiences every time we share them. A difficult experience is a difficult experience, and when it's infertility, we're talking about deeply personal, difficult experiences here. This is something that Nicole herself was quick to point out.
My journey, although different than yours, Mary, is not any less hard, miscarriages and all that, it goes hand in hand with the drama of infertility.
So now let's hear about Nicole's journey.
It definitely developed. I was very much a free bird and did what I wanted on my own, got married later in life, and it just wasn't the number one priority at that point. But then when I got married, my husband was very much into having a family, and I was not against it by any means. It just never was a thought.
Nicole shared that part of the reason that she wasn't eager to pursue having a baby was because she had an assumption that it would be a difficult journey. And that's because she had some medical issues when she was 19.
I had ovarian cysts that were massive. And so unfortunately, they had to remove my right ovary, partial left, and my tubes, which was very unexpected and shocking. And at the time, freezing eggs was sort of fairly new. I mean, I didn't grow up in the 1800s, but it was certainly new. And they weren't 100% sure what would last and what would not last. And so we did try using twice my eggs, and they were just not good quality. So, but I was just insistent on having my children be biological. So we tried. And then after 5 attempts, twice with mine, twice with another donor whose eggs were not any better than mine, we finally got a third egg donor, at which point we were told that because of my prior surgeries, I would not be able to carry full term. And so it was very risky for my life and the potential children. And so that's when my wonderful BFF over here was like, I'll carry for you. And then 2 minutes later, she was pregnant. Well, not with my kids, with her own. So that went that plan.
Yes, Mary offered to be a surrogate, but as you heard, that wasn't going to be possible. Getting the news and coming to terms with the idea of needing a surrogate can be very difficult.
I'm going raw right now for you, okay? I was really angry. I was angry at God. I was angry at my friends. I was just angry at everybody because I just couldn't understand why it was almost getting more difficult as we went on. And I know to some people, you adopt a child, you love a child. It doesn't matter if you're a parent, you just love them. But I really, really wanted them to be genetically mine. There was one thing getting the news about the egg donation. And then, and Mary, I think you'll recall this, when I finally accepted it, we finally got a donor and I was ready for my first transfer, literally hours before, remember, I get a call from the clinic, the fertility clinic, saying, you cannot carry, we cannot move forward. Something was wrong. I had an aneurysm that I was born with in my heart that nobody after so many years had ever detected. And here I was so excited and so hopeful and just ready. And I remember distinctly calling Mary and being like,
we were actually in the car.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right. We were together.
Yes.
That's right, Mary. You were in the car and it was just devastating. I'm going to start to cry right now. It was devastating because I just felt broken to begin with. And now I felt completely useless. And it's such a weird dynamic when, you're just thinking about procreating and it should be so simple and it should be what everybody's meant to do. And that's why we're here as women and blah, blah, blah. And then to go from, okay, well, they're not going to be genetically yours and you cannot carry. Now you have to have 2 women make your dreams of being a mother come true. It's daunting, but even more so once the process happens. Forget about the financial aspects of a surrogate. But knowing at the time when we did it, surrogacy was not legal in New York. So we had to go out of state. So I was as disconnected from this process as ever, even though my surrogate, who I still love to this day, really tried to keep me in the world with the sonograms, just all the meeting, keeping me updated on everything. And she had a very difficult pregnancy, didn't make it any easier because then I felt this guilt as a woman that I put somebody else through that.
Yes, people talk about surrogacy a lot, and the first thing that is usually brought up is, well, the cost. And don't get me wrong, the financial cost can be extremely high. But because of that high cost, people tend to overlook some of the other obstacles. Laws at the time meant that Nicole needed a surrogate out of state, which is not only a logistical issue, but for her, it was an emotional one as well.
This is really weird, and we're not doing a psych thing here, but we just got the girls' passports done. And this is now, the girls are 7. And on the passport, it says where they were born. And that still triggers me. I don't know why. Oh, man. There's something about it that bothers me because it's just a reminder. And, the day after the girls were, or the day before the girls were born, because it was a scheduled C-section. And I didn't know this because we had a surrogate lawyer and somebody forgot to tell me that I had to go to court to adopt them. And that really was another, just another, wow. Well, okay. I didn't expect it. I didn't know I had to. I mean, clearly it makes sense. But at that moment, my head was about, having twins and what are we going to do next and changing diapers and all the mom things that you're excited to do and scared to do.
And that brings us to that moment at the start of the episode.
It was a bunch of our college girlfriends, like our little group. We were together for a particular weekend, and I vividly remember standing in my kitchen on the island, and I purposely stood away from Nicole because I was pregnant with my third, and was really, really nervous to say it, in front of Nicole, but I figured it was probably better to do it in a group than one-on-one. And I forget exactly how it came out, but I vividly remember Nicole's reaction. There were definitely some curses in
Sorry.
there, and yes,
Did I?
there was enough.
I'm blaming it on the hormones or the lack thereof. I distinctly remember that moment. And, it's so hard. Like now in 2024, you go on Instagram and it's just loaded with people who have gone through what I went through, years ago. And I read some other women saying, I can't go to baby showers. I can't do this. I can't do that. And it was the same kind of feeling with Mary's situation because, you love someone so much, they want the best for you, and you don't want to be that petty, jealous, bitter person. But when you've tried over and over and over again, and then you're hearing people say, oh, God's rejection is your protection. It's like, really? Like, it doesn't help. It really doesn't help. And of course I was happy for her, but then I went home and cried for about 4 hours. But at the end of the day, it is what it is, and I almost, in a way, wish I knew what I knew now then, especially, and I know we're not necessarily talking about egg donation, but especially when it came to getting an egg donor on board.
It was difficult. Nicole was going through a lot, and Mary didn't always know exactly what to say, what to share, or how best to protect her friend. But despite everything, the two made it through. And when Nicole head off to Colorado for the birth of her babies, it was Mary who led the charge, planning for her return back to New York.
When you were coming back from Colorado, right? Because someone had to be home.
Break into my house.
So I thought I had the key. It wasn't the right key. Fast forward, I had to break into her house. Taking an air conditioner out of a window because we wanted to set everything up. And anyway, so yeah, it was just being that support, like, the behind the scenes, out in front, but just wherever you need me.
Yeah, she was always there.
Infertility is one of those things that stays with you. We featured many on this show who experienced infertility, eventually had a child, but then continued to work in and around the fertility business. Some write books, others start nonprofits. Well, Nicole and Mary are both bringing their infertility experiences with them to their work. Let's start with Mary, who helps employers provide their employees with various benefits, and often benefits that can help cover fertility treatment.
It's easier to talk about things when you have actual experience with them. So when we're working with employers and we're looking at plan spend, which is how this usually comes up, understanding the costs that are associated with these different activities and processes helps to organize and frame the conversation. So for instance, we'll have a lot of organizations that'll say, okay, we have this fertility benefit, and that's what it is. And we want to be kind of middle of the pack in terms of our peers, et cetera. But it's my job to bring the issues to them, or the considerations, I should say, around like, okay, so have you looked at how your medical plan administrator is handling this? Like, have the definitions changed, the diagnosis of infertility removed, all of those things, and just knowing what to ask, and then being able to make the links between the medical plan and outside the medical plan, right? So it's not just, can you get pregnant, but what about leaves of absence? Certainly surrogacy and adoption sit outside. And for a long, long time, up until very recently, the adoption benefit just kind of sat outside the medical plan, right? And it was like one of those things that you'd have to track down HR and find out. But no, now it's brought under the umbrella of family planning, and families come in all shapes and sizes, and forming them, happens all sorts of ways. But I would say that, yes, my experience helps me dig into what employers can think about and how they should think about it. There are lots of reasons. In terms of just looking at the issue itself, it's part of family building. And that is something that is top of mind for every employer that we work with. It not only speaks to, different diversity issues, but also connecting with employees and making sure that they're taking care of the whole person, right? So people don't just come to work, they come to work, they bring their whole self with them, and, what are their needs, and making sure that they're providing for them.
So while Mary helps employers better help their employees who need help with family building, Nicole is using her experience in a very different way. See, Nicole is a filmmaker, and a very specific experience along her journey, well, must have felt cinematic. I'll set it up. This is when she had matched with a donor, and she was visiting the doctor the day before her embryo transfer. The embryo transfer that would be canceled when the doctors realized that Nicole wouldn't safely be able to carry.
I saw a picture of her prior to this visit, prior to the day before visit, and I knew what she looked like. My husband did not want to, for whatever reason, just didn't want to see the picture. I was like, fine. So I wasn't allowed to take a picture of the picture, so I had to just put it in my brain. And so the day that my husband dropped me off, he needed the car to go out to Long Island for work, and he dropped me off a good hour, if not earlier, from my appointment. So they purposely they stagger your appointment so this doesn't happen. So I was sitting there, and I'm now pumped, and I'm ready for that transfer. And, again, going back to that hope and excitement. And this young lady comes out, and I already knew how tall my donor was. She was specifically very tall. So this was a very tall individual. She had a hoodie on, glasses, and she was about to leave when they called her back to make some payment or sign paperwork. So she took her hoodie off, took the glasses off, and it was, going to try not to cry. It was just, sorry about that. It was, sorry, Mare. It was hard. I knew it was her. I wanted to say hello. I wanted to, meet the woman that was going to be the baby mama, so to say. And I called my husband, freaking out. And I'm like, she's here. What do I do? And he's like, you sit down and you don't do anything. And I'm like, but shouldn't I just say hello? Can I get a picture with her as if she was a celebrity? There was such a need to know more than what was on that piece of paper. And so, I did leave. And my husband heard the door of the clinic close, and he's like, Nicole, people get arrested for this. Go back. You can't do this. This is called stalking. So I didn't go very far, but while I sat there waiting for the appointment and for my blood work, I just thought about how absurd this whole thing was. And that's where the premise for the movie came up.
Yes, Nicole made a movie called Good Egg. Now let me read the description for you. A high school drama teacher, after failed attempts of IVF to conceive a child, is forced to consider an unconventional egg donor scenario that plunges her into a dangerous and exhilarating adventure with her husband. Unlike other infertility stories, this one's set up a bit more like an action thriller, and there's plenty of comedy in there too.
I had seen quite a few movies about IVF, and I literally couldn't get 20 minutes past it because it was so depressing and it just triggered way too hard. I still can't watch Private Lives with Paul Giamatti. I just can't. It's so hard. And I thought, how could I make a funny spin out of this? And so the humor, it's more of an adventure comedy, but there's a lot of heart to it. And I didn't want to lose that heart because I wanted my voice to be heard and for other women and men alike to hear and feel that sense as if I was speaking through them. And it's absurd. As not to keep aging us, but I always had a feel for the 90s style film, those wacky midnight run comedies where it's just crazy. And so I went with it. And, in this case, she follows her potential egg donor, which is somebody she doesn't even know. But it was the fact that she was able to connect in person that meant more to her than anything else.
There's a lot more to the story, a con artist, a kidnapping, and a whole lot more. You can find the film at Prime Video and at Apple TV. Once again, it's called Good Egg. We've covered a lot in this episode. We've talked about a movie, two very different family building journeys, and we've even managed to sneak in a little part about employer-sponsored fertility benefits, like Progyny. That's a benefit I'm very proud of. But from the open, this episode has really been a story of friendship and support.
There's nothing like that connection, and it is a sisterhood of sorts, and although she went through her journey very different than mine, for me personally, I don't know if I would have been, and I'm not going to make you cry, but I don't know if I would have been able to get through it without her. My sister was gone. Other friends were in different states. Mary was 7 blocks away at the time. And I think it did. And I think the one thing that about having a friend like Mary is someone who can see beyond themselves and be empathetic to a level of just being there, just knowing that at any point I can pick up the phone, even if she was overseas, and, and just have that connection.
We've absolutely been there for each other for so many different issues, whether it's this or something else, and you have that connection. I know that no matter what, it doesn't matter. Nicole is, I hate to say, like family, but she's my sister, no matter what. And, we've established those bonds with godparent responsibilities and, lots of other things, but it's just a bond that absolutely is strengthened when you go through something like this and you watch somebody go through it. And then you get to see like, oh my God, the babies are here. And I still call them the babies.
And with that, I want to thank Nicole and Mary for sharing their experiences here with us today. And I want to thank you for listening. Remember, the purpose of stories like this isn't to give you a blueprint of how you can build your family, but rather to give you comfort in knowing that you really aren't alone. There are scores of people who are going through their own journeys. And while not all endings are going to be the same, we hope you can take some solace in knowing that there are options for support out there. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to connect with us, you can do so on Instagram at This Is Infertility Podcast. If you want to follow Progyny, you can do that at Progyny Inc. Of course, if you're listening on a podcast app, please leave a rating and review. This Is Infertility is brought to you by Progyny. Please remember this podcast is not intended to substitute for the personalized expert advice of your physician. I'm Dan Bulger, and this is Infertility.